Welcome to Learning Across Kansas. I'm your host, Cindy Couchman. Learning Across Kansas is a joint partnership between the Kansas State Department of Education and the Kansas Public Broadcasting Service. Today's episode is on Kansas and agriculture. I'm at the base of Coronado Heights. Coronado Heights was built in the 1930s as part of the Kansas Works Progress Administration. I'll see you at the top. Welcome to the top of Coronado Heights, only we're not all the way to the top. I'll see you up there. Welcome to the very top of Coronado Heights. Today's episode on Kansas and agriculture will take us all over the state to learn about agriculture in Kansas. We're going to start with Belew in Andover to learn about multi-generational farming. We'll travel to Eskridge with Kelly Hoelting to learn about career opportunities in agriculture. Off to Maize with Stan Bergkamp to learn about the math science involved in pivot irrigation. Cherryl Delacruz in Topeka will teach us with another Would You Rather question. In Gardner-Edgerton, Shannon Ralph will teach us about famous Kansas scientists. Then we travel to DeSoto with Keil Hileman to learn about the history of aviation and aerospace in Kansas. We will close the episode with Neill and Buhler to learn about famous Kansas authors. And Erica Shook and McPherson will end the episode with an acrostic poetry challenge. So let's get started. Off to Andover with Belew.
Thank you, Cindy. If you're going to talk Kansas agriculture, you better sit down and talk to one of the Peterson brothers, well known for their YouTube videos of farm parodies and their social media presence that advocates for agriculture here in Kansas and beyond. So my first question is, why do you choose to farm?
Well, a big part of why I chose to farm was just growing up in farming and growing up on a fifth-generation family farm, working with my dad since, as long as I can remember, even as a young child, I would help him. And when I went to college, I majored in ag communications just because I didn't know exactly if I wanted to farm 100% full-time or if I wanted to do some things along with it. And
what would you tell a young person who is trying to decide whether or not to go into farming?
You can start in a lot of different ways. You don't have to start with 1,000 acres and a full fleet of machinery. You can get started working for another farmer. You can get started on a small scale. That's one of the things I really believe in is that, especially when you're getting started, to have some off-farm income, and that really takes the stress out of it, I think. And then, working for other people, that can always broaden your skills and, teach you some things that you wouldn't have gotten to learn without that.
You are internet famous. My niece explained to me what residue was with one of your videos.
My brothers and I, we made that video just for our friends, and it blew up. It was 5 million views in a week, which back in 2012, that was huge. That was like insane. I mean, that was at the kind of beginning of YouTube, and so we were on the news, and it was all over the place. So that's how we got started, and we just kind of continued to make videos because people keep watching them.
What a great way to start off our adventure in agriculture this week. Greg Peterson and his brothers have done so many cool and interesting creative things on their farm. Look what you can do when you find your passion, add creativity, magic happens. The photo credits go to Garrett and Arissa Kennedy. Now, off to Kelly Hoelting.
What do you want to be when you grow up? We've all been asked this question hundreds of times, but it's hard to know the answer when you don't know all of the options. In Kansas, agriculture is one of our largest sectors of jobs. These agriculture careers can span from anything from farmer to engineer and everything in between. There are so many opportunities for our students to go directly into the workforce or go to post-secondary options. To find out more about these opportunities, we're going to hear from Russ Plaschka, the Ag Business Development Coordinator with the Kansas Department of Ag. Russ, what can you tell us about careers in ag?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today, but career opportunities are endless in agriculture, especially in the state of Kansas. In the state of Kansas, agriculture is our #1 economic driver. In other words, agriculture provides more dollars to our economy than any other sector in the state of Kansas. Almost a little over $65 billion each year into the Kansas economy. And when we talk about careers, as you said, Kelly, agriculture as a whole employs about 13% of the workforce across the state of Kansas. So I want to show you just a little graphic here that kind of gives you an idea of the jobs that are out there in the state of Kansas. And this is a word map taken directly from all the ag openings that we've seen all across, whether it's media, whether it's newspapers, or even some internet sites. But these are the types of jobs that are available. Everything from an agricultural lawyer, shipping coordinator, plant pathologist, swine operations, beef operations, dairies, small animal veterinarian, large animal veterinarians. The opportunities are pretty endless. 5 of those top careers do not require a 4-year degree. When we think about those topics or those titles of jobs, we need to understand what those jobs are. So my advice is get experience, internships, job shadowing. It's never too early to start that. Even in your freshman, sophomore year, to do job shadowing. Your instructors and companies are looking for high school age students, 16 years and above, that can go to work in the summers or maybe even during the school year to really gain experience. So the opportunities really are endless. And I want to follow in by just saying, find out what problems you want to solve and then figure out what tools you need to solve those problems.
Thank you very much, Russ. We appreciate your knowledge and looking forward to finding out what problems our students can solve in agriculture in their communities throughout Kansas.
Kansas school buildings may be closed for the remainder of the academic year, but school is still in session. Keeping students engaged in the learning process during this extraordinary time is critical for their ongoing success. We salute our teachers, parents, and guardians who are committed to ensuring their students finish this year strong. We're all ready for our lives to get back to normal, but until that time, Kansas students, keep learning and keep working toward your goals. Together, Kansans can.
The view atop Coronado Heights really demonstrates the landscape of agriculture in Kansas. We're going to go to Maize with Stan Bergkamp to learn about irrigating these amazing fields. Off to you, Stan.
I'm excited to talk to you today about how center pivot irrigation systems work. So each center pivot irrigation system has a certain number of components. So behind me in the shed is the heart and soul of what makes this thing work. So within that, there's an engine that pumps the water out of the ground, and that also runs a hydraulic pump, which makes the wheels turn, which we'll see too in just a little bit. So the water comes into this system right here, and the hydraulics as well, and then from there it feeds out, and then it goes all the way down the length of the center pivot irrigation system where that water is dispensed. So this system is capable of pumping 450 gallons of water a minute. So that would fill up your bathtub really, really quickly. So now we're going to look at this from a different perspective once we fly it with the drone. Out here by the operating center pivot machine, and what's happening is that the hydraulic system is getting a little wet. It's driving the wheels, and so what's happening is that we're taking rotational energy and we're translating that into linear motion. So as this is rolling, you'll see that these wheels on the outside have to spin a lot faster than the wheels on the inside because they have to travel a greater distance in the same amount of time to keep the solid system moving as one big line. So how fast that moves is a function of its radius and how fast that wheel is spinning, and then that translates into a linear velocity to make the whole thing move. So the outside wheels spin a lot faster than the inside wheels do. As we travel towards the outside edge of the system, the angular velocity is staying the same, but the radius is getting bigger. So the linear velocity is increasing. So that is why we have to have more water dumping on the outside edge as on the inside edge to get the same amount of water. And now we're going to go to Cherryl, who's going to explain how mathematics is used in agriculture.
Kansas is made up of more than 80% farmland, and there's so much more involved in farming than simply raising a few animals or planting some crops. It also utilizes mathematics. Proportional relationship and percent like unit conversion, measurement, perimeter, area, weights, volume, etc. What about time and money, estimation, prediction, and linear programming? And don't forget precision agriculture that uses data, equations, algorithms, and math models, and of course optimization, and many, many, many more. Well, here's another mathematical discourse around farms for you. Would you rather buy a farm with an area modeled by the equation A of W equals negative 1.5 W squared plus 900 W, or modeled by the graph shown in the picture?
I would rather buy the farm with its area demonstrated by the graph because that farm has a larger area. In order to show that it has the largest area, you need to find the maximum area produced by the equation, which can be done by finding the vertex of the parabola that the equation makes. In order to find this vertex, you use the equation h equals negative b over 2a in order to find the x-coordinate of the vertex. Once you find that x-coordinate, you're able to plug in that value into the original a of w equation to find what the maximum area would be, which is 135,000 square meters, which is less than the 180,000 square meters approximately that the graph shows.
I would rather choose the given graph because as a Kansas farmer, I would want more land. After graphing the given equation of a of w equals negative 1.5 w squared plus 900 w, you can see that the vertex is only at 135,000, which means it is lower than the given graph's vertex of 180,625. The higher the vertex and the wider the parabola, the more area there will be. Therefore, the area of the given graph will have more farmland than the area of the given equation.
Did you see how they solved it in different ways? What about you? Would you rather buy a farm modeled by the equation A of W equals negative 1.5 W squared plus 900 W, or modeled by the graph below?
Ready to watch the best of PBS anytime, anywhere, on nearly any device? It's easy with the free PBS Video app. Simply download the PBS Video app on your mobile or streaming device. Now you can watch the latest PBS episodes or catch up on the shows you missed, discover new favorites from PBS, and local content from your PBS station. Get the free PBS Video app now and stream the best of PBS anytime you want, anywhere you are.
Kansas agriculture and landscape is often a feature work in artists in Kansas. I'm in the Sandzen Gallery with Ron Michael, who is the director of the Sandzen Gallery. Ron, tell us a little bit about Birger Sandzen. Did I say his name right?
You got it right.
Awesome.
That's what I always like to get people started on, is the right pronunciation of his name.
Tell us a little bit about him and what his connection to Kansas is.
Okay, well, Sandzen was actually born in Sweden in 1871, came to America primarily to teach at Bethany in 1894, and really remained here for the rest of his life. So he was a phenomenal artist. He taught at Bethany College for over 50 years and retired in 1946.
Wow.
And painting-wise, he was also very prolific. He did about we estimate 2,800 oil paintings, and we have about 250 in our collection. And the painting on my left is called Creek at Moonrise, and it's a scene from Graham County, Kansas, which is the farm ground that the Sandzen family had was actually pretty close to Hill City, a little bit to the southeast of Hill City. And so this is probably, I would say, the most recognized painting that Sandzen ever did. One thing that draws a lot of people into Sandzen's paintings are the reflections that you can see. When you look up close at a Sandzen painting, it's interesting because it looks like kind of cake frosting, real heavy application of paint. Another feature from this painting that's always very interesting is the full moon that you can see over the horizon. That's kind of a classic Sandzen thing as well.
Thank you, Ron, for letting us be here in the Sandzen Gallery and all your information about this beautiful painting. We are now going to go to Shannon Ralph in Gardner-Edgerton to learn about some famous Kansas scientists.
Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it is from standing on the shoulders of giants." Kansas has a ton of giants. Let me introduce you to two of them. One of the key characteristics of scientists is perseverance. You can't really think about that without thinking about George Washington Carver. Here was a man who was born early in the Civil War. He endured many hardships because he was African American, but he persevered and finally landed as the head of the Ag Department at Tuskegee Institute. While there, he did many experiments on plants because his goal was to help poor Southern farmers. Some of the things that he figured out was how to convert sweet potatoes into cereal. He figured out how to convert soybeans into plastic, and he came up with over 300 byproducts from peanuts, almost single-handedly saving the peanut industry. He was an amazing scientist. Oh, and do you want to know how to make plastic out of soybean oil? I can show you. Okay, what you're going to need to do is put in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch into a baggie. Put in 2 tablespoons of water, and then 4 or 5 drops of soybean oil. Then add a couple of drops of your favorite food coloring. Seal off your baggie, and then you're going to knead it all together for about 3 minutes. Okay, once you're done kneading it, you're going to need to cut a couple of little air holes in your baggie and then throw it in the microwave for 30 to 40 seconds. Now be careful, because when you take it out, it's going to be really hot. Once it's cooled off, you can open your baggie and voila! You have officially made plastic. Ta-da! Another scientist I really like talking about is Jack Kilby. Jack went to school and graduated from Great Bend High School. He served in World War II and then worked for Texas Instruments down in Texas. While there, he figured out how to build an integrated circuit on a small chip, the microchip. Changed our world. Most of the technology we have today is because of the work that he did. He won the Nobel Prize in 2000 in physics because of this work. One of the things I like that Jack Kilby said was that we all should make a contribution with our life. And now to learn about Kansas, aerospace, and aviation, we're going to kick it to Keil, to infinity and beyond.
Thanks for all those amazing scientists and stories from Kansas, Shannon. I will tell you, Kansas has a great history, and it's connected to aerospace and aviation. Most people know agriculture is the #1 money-making business in Kansas. #2 is aviation, and people forget that. Going all the way back to the dreams of flight from Leonardo da Vinci in the Middle Ages, to choosing an eagle as our national symbol, or even the Wright brothers flying in 1903. World War I changed Kansas in a lot of ways. One was pilots coming home after flying biplanes and monoplanes and not having a job. Crop dusting in the early 1920s and barnstorming, believe it or not, paying $1 or $2 to ride an airplane and fly around and zoom at the barns. They even had aerial circuses where airplanes performed acrobats and people walked on the wings and even hung off of the wings. Aviation's always been a part of Kansas history, and we've embraced it wholeheartedly. In World War II, Kansas rose to the challenge of the Axis powers. We built Mitchell B-25 bombers in Kansas City. We built over 6,600 of these medium-range bombers, which were literally used to bomb Japan in World War II to let them know their homeland was not impervious to attack like they'd been told by their emperor. If you notice the unusual vertical stabilizers there on the tail, I will tell you that holds special interest to me. The lapel pin you see right here is from my grandfather, Keil Hileman, who helped design that tail section on the Mitchell B-25. Before the war's end, we will build in Wichita the B-29 Super Fortress, the single most complex, amazing aircraft of World War II. It's pressurized, it's large enough to drop atom bombs, and it can fly farther than any other bomber in history. We helped end World War II with Kansas aviation. Now, if you see the Mercury astronaut, you need to know that Kansas is now the Space Vehicle Restoration Center for the United States. This is a toy model of a Mercury space capsule. Liberty Bell 7 was restored in Kansas. We have even created astronauts. Steve Hawley took this Kansas flag into outer space on the space shuttle. Kansas, where aviation and aerospace engineering grow and prosper.
Hey parents, you're doing great! With Kansas school buildings closed and homes being turned into classrooms, parents and caregivers have expanded their roles in their students' learning. This is a new experience for most of us, so let's show one another a little grace. When you and your students start to feel overwhelmed or stressed, take a break. It's really okay. Keeping students interested and engaged in learning is the key to success. Remember, you have an entire community of fellow caregivers and teachers to lean on. Reach out. Together, Kansans can.
Welcome back. I'm here at the Sandzen Gallery again with Ron Michael. Ron, if you will tell us about this Barrier Sandzen painting in front of us.
Well, this is a work called Twilight, but this one is more of a local scene. It's a scene from just outside, just a little northwest of Linsport. And it really captures that kind of twilight feel. It's one of my favorite landscapes. And I know in the earlier painting we talked a little bit about the moon, how important that is in some Sandzen paintings. And this one, if you'll notice, has a little crescent moon up in the upper right. So I've always really liked that.
Beautiful. And if people wanted to come and visit the Sandzen Galleries, when are you guys open?
Okay, so we're open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 until 5, and then on Sunday from 1 until 5. So there's no admission charge, so come and visit the gallery when you have the chance.
We love free, so thank you, Ron, for letting us film here. And famous artists, famous scientists in Kansas. We also have famous authors in Kansas. In fact, one of a really well-known literary award has roots right here in Kansas. Sam, Neill, and Buhler is going to give us a little more information about that.
So throughout this episode, we have learned about how Kansans have contributed to the aerospace industry, the farming industry, science, and history. But you know what? Kansas has some great writers too. Langston Hughes is one of them. He wrote during the Harlem Renaissance. And William Allen White, he was a famous journalist from Emporia, whose book award is one of the most highly coveted awards in all of literature. Matter of fact, lists are published every year that recommend great books to readers. I think about my students who are great writers. And I think about my students who sometimes struggle with writing and think they're not great writers. And so it got me thinking, there are some pretty simple things that we can do and we can learn to add to our writing so that we someday might be on that list of famous writers too. Once we're done, I'm going to send it down the road to Erica Shook and McPherson. So let's talk about these tips. Step 1 is to use active verbs, sometimes called dynamic verbs in our writing. These are verbs that are used to explain what the subject of a sentence is actively doing. These verbs are also tied to emotions and images in our head, so when we hear them, we think of certain things. So let's start with a sample sentence. I walked through the hallway. But what if I changed the verb walked to moped? What effect does that have on the sentence? Or if I changed the verb moped to sprinted through the hallway, how does that change it? When we think of these words, walked, moped, and sprinted, different feelings and pictures should come to our mind. Step 2 is adding adjectives. They answer questions and add descriptions. Which one, what kind, how many, and how much? So what kind of hallway, you might ask? Well, what if I moped through the lonely hallway? Then I'm describing what kind of hallway it is, and I'm adding an emotion to it. There's no doubt our hallways are missing you right now. Step number 3 is adding adverbs. These words clarify our verbs, and they answer questions like how, when, where, why, and to what extent. So let's look at another picture I took this weekend. The brown squirrel peered over the fence. See what happens when I add an adverb to the sentence? The brown squirrel nervously peered over the fence. These are just a few examples. Kansas is full of beautiful imagery, so try adding those action verbs, adjectives, and adverbs to your writing. You'll be surprised what a difference it makes. And now to Erica and McPherson.
Hello, friends. Now that Sam has taught you how to improve your writing with word choice, I want to show you a particular type of writing that you can use to practice your new skills.
An acrostic poem is a type of poem in which certain letters in each line of poetry, when read vertically, spell a certain word or phrase.
I might choose to write my name E-R-I-C-A, down one side of my paper. And then let's go with adjectives, words that I think describe me. All right, so there's nothing wrong with those words, right? Those are great words. But let's think about what Sam taught us about word choice and how that can affect the tone or the feel of what you're writing. So after consulting my thesaurus and looking for some other adjectives, let's do this. I'm going to write my name down the side here again, E-R-I-C-A. And now I'm going to change my adjectives a little bit.
So I've still just used single word adjectives, but look at how my word choice has changed the way my acrostic poem feels.
So there are lots of different ways that you could write an acrostic. Really, your imagination is your only limit. You could do what we just did, or you could do something like Sam did. All right, now I'm going to write another acrostic. I'm going to use the same phrase that Sam did, Kansans can, but I did some research into wildflowers in Kansas, and I chose some wildflowers that start with each of those letters. Okay, now you try it. Take that same phrase, Kansans can, and see what you can come up with. Write your own acrostic poem. Now, who could you share that with? Could you send it to your teacher and get feedback on your writing? We want to see what you can come up with. Share your Kansans Can acrostic poems with us on social media using the hashtag LearningAcrossKansas.
As the sun sets on Kansas this evening, so does it set on this episode of Learning Across Kansas. Learning Across Kansas is a joint partnership between the Kansas State Department of Education and the Kansas Public Broadcasting Service. I'm your host, Cindy Couchman. Thank you for joining us.